We have moved on to the offseason, sadly. And now it's a Mailbag Monday. Going to do Mailbag Mondays throughout the offseason. So let's start with Jayson Tatum questions, roster building questions. It's all right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-Team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap, salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, keep John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. Thank you for making this show part of your daily routine. And it's still part of your daily routine, even though the off season is upon us. I know it's sad, but we have to move on. Hopefully this weekend has helped dull some of that pain. And now we look forward to how do the Celtics win a championship rather than just get to the NBA finals. It all starts right now, Monday, with the plan moving forward. So let's answer some questions. This show, by the way, daily, Monday through Friday, free, available wherever you get your podcasts. It's on YouTube, so you can watch the show on YouTube. And I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've written a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. I was one of the media voters for the 75th anniversary team. And I've got to come up with a new intro for this upcoming season because, the 75th anniversary is over. Let's get into some of these mailbag questions. First, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. If you want to get in on this, I figure the offseason is a great time to do a regular mailbag. It's hard to do. It was impossible to do during the playoffs. There's just so much to talk about as far as each game. But now that the offseason is here, a lot of stuff is happening. We could do a regular Mailbag Monday. You go to my website, johnkaralis.com/mailbag. That's where I'm going to be taking a lot of these questions. It's a nice central location. I know people want to put them in comments or tweets or anything like that, but this is the best way for me to get them organized and just have them all in one place so I can get them and answer them. So this to me is the best way to do it. It's johnkaralis.com/mailbag, or if you go to johnkaralis.com, you'll see the mailbag link at the top. So today we had some goofy questions, which are always welcome. You can have some fun with some questions at the end, some interesting kind of questions as far as just sidebar basketball stuff. Team building questions, which I will in the second segment get into a lot of the team building, what the Celtics have, what the Celtics can do. And this week I'll get into that. Like it's basically this week's going to be a big kind of reset. What do the Celtics have? What can they do? How can they move forward? And I'll just get a bunch of different perspectives on that all week long to get us really set up for the offseason, because free agency starts very, very soon. It starts in 11 days. So lots to get into in a very short amount of time. But the first segment is about Jayson Tatum. Lots of questions about Jayson Tatum. So let's spend the first few minutes of the show talking about JT. And the first question is simply, can Tatum be the best player on a championship winning team? Now, this is an interesting phrasing from Jared. Can Tatum be the best player on a championship parentheses winning team? And this is an interesting kind of people who have had this question. I'm not saying this about Jared necessarily, but people who have had this question about other players. Marcus Smart comes up. People have said, well, he can't be the point guard of a championship team. And then that's getting thrown back at people like me who think he can be. And I say, look, they just got to the finals with him as the point guard. Like you had a 2-1 lead in the finals with Marcus Smart as the point guard. And I'll extend it out to this 2-1 lead in the finals with Jayson Tatum on the team as your best player. So can he be the best player on a championship winning team? Yeah. You were just 2 games away and you had leads in the final 3 games And in 2 of those games, you had fourth quarter leads. So let's not lose sight of what is happening, what happened with the Celtics. They weren't good enough. They weren't mentally ready. A little bit of help off the bench, a little bit better roster, a little bit better players, more dependable guys that Ime could trust, guys that the players on the floor can trust, guys that on the defense defense had to respect. Takes pressure off of these guys. Tatum at 24, Jaylen at 25. Those guys had a tough first go at the finals. So I feel good about them moving forward. I said it before. I'll say it about Tatum again. The guy I saw sitting at that podium after the game, after they lost, was devastated, crushed. And I think for all of the coolness of Tatum after losses, I saw a guy that really is taking this to heart. That's my interpretation. And I'm big on one of the things that I think is very important is to be able to, as an observer, I've said this on the podcast before, you got to be able to observe and get the baseline. You got to get baseline behavior. That's why when you do concussion tests, you get baseline behavior, baseline cognitive ability. And then when there's a deviation from that, you now can say, okay, this is different. Why is this different? Well, with Tatum, I think the baseline has been coolness after losses, and hey, we'll figure it out. We'll get better. We'll watch the film and so on. Well, that was replaced by short answers, devastation. I think what we are used to with Tatum is a guy who understands the length of the season and all of that stuff. And now when it's over, he took that to heart. So I'm leaning on that. I'm leaning on Tatum's reaction that tells me this guy's taking this to heart. This guy understands. He knows all of the stuff that you're saying about him. He knows. He gets it. The turnovers were bad. He didn't finish at the rim. Bad. All of that stuff was bad. He gets it. And I think he's going to come back better. So the answer, can Tatum be the best player on a championship winning team? Yes. I think these guys are going to they're going to come back. I think they're going to come back strong. And this ties into what Andrew sent in, he said he's writing with 4:52 left in the third quarter of game 6. Does Tatum need to improve his finishing at the rim? Is that the kind of thing he can work on in the offseason? He's been great, but it feels like he needs to step it up even more if the C's are able to get over the hump. This was a big season for that. And it's funny because the season started in a spot, and then it went way, way up. And then at the end, it came right back down to that spot where the defense was great. The offense was questionable. The shooting had abandoned them a little bit. And there were always questions about their bench. And Tatum at the beginning of the season couldn't finish at the rim at all. Then he had a big, middle of the season where he really improved. March and April, he was somewhere around high 70%, 80% finishing at the restricted area. And then that dipped to 56%, 55% in the playoffs. And I didn't even check that number after the last couple of games. So that probably dropped a little bit. That is certainly an area where he can improve. And I think that's going to be, it should be a point of emphasis for him. The shooting, obviously, the beginning of the season, he struggled with that. That's something that he's always going to have. I think he's just going to be a good 3-point shooter, and he's going to work on that for sure. But the ball handling and finishing at the rim, being able to put his shoulder down, create space, and finish at the rim is going to be an important element. And I actually was talking to somebody before game 6, and I said, I think Tatum needs to spend a few weeks working out with Isaiah Thomas. Because Isaiah Thomas and a lot of these smaller guards know how to use their body to get separation. Now, I think Tatum can learn from Isaiah Thomas and learn from other guys. You can learn from Hakeem Olajuwon and get some get some tips that way with the footwork and all of that. But the ability to create separation and use your body, get that shoulder down, get that elbow out there, to do it without the full extension, because the full extension is the offensive foul. Tatum is constantly like slapping guys away and pushing guys away and extending the arm. He needs to be able to use his body more. I think somebody he really should work out with is Paul Pierce, because Pierce had that same sort of build where huge up top shoulders, skinny waist. If you ever see Tatum walking out for warmups, his shoulders are like 2 feet out the side of his body. The waist is like this tiny little, it's wild to see. His tailor must have a hell of a time. But Tatum can use those shoulders. Like Pierce was extraordinary at getting that shoulder down and then turning it like he was behind you, and then he'd kind of turn to his side, and then he was ahead of you, because he just used that broad upper back to just kind of push people out of the way and get himself to where he needs to go. So I think there's a couple of players, Isaiah and Paul Pierce, that could help him develop that driving game. And then it's just playing off of 2 feet a lot more, being able to go up strong and understand, like mentally, Tatum needs to understand, you are a big dude. You're a big dude. Go out there and just play like a 6'10", broad-shouldered, just beast. Go out there and play like that. That's been my biggest thing for Tatum when it comes to driving to the rim. Get that body, use that body, play aggressively, play off 2 feet, start dunking on people. I want to see a Tatum that comes back next year and like shoulders a guy out of the way, takes 2 steps, plays off 2 feet, rises up, and just posterizes somebody. That is Tatum's next step. And we'll wrap up this segment. Speaking of shoulders, Zerb, do you think Tatum's shoulder issue is more of a problem than they are letting on? I always thought that it was that cervical nerve impingement. I never heard anything about it being a shoulder structural issue. And since if that's the case, if that's honestly the case, then I think it's simply rest, massaging it, some level of treatment, but it's a pinched nerve. And pinched nerves suck. They really, really hurt. But there's nothing structural in the shoulder. So it's not like they need to go in and scope the shoulder, unless there is actually something going on in the shoulder and that was just never let out. But my understanding was always that it was the cervical nerve impingement, the pinched nerve, and that's what was kind of holding, creating the pain. Hit him the wrong way, and like the arm goes numb. Maybe it's possible that all of the stuff that I was talking about, get your shoulder down and getting into somebody, that might have kind of put that mental kind of hurdle in his head saying, oh, I don't want to do this because it's going to hurt. Possible, certainly possible. But I don't think it's more of an issue as far as I don't think that they're going to need to go in and do any kind of surgery or anything like that. All right, we're talking about TPEs now. We're talking about roster building. So I'll talk about that next. First, let's talk about BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting needs. Basketball, done. But hey, if you want to watch basketball, you want to watch the WNBA, you can bet on that for sure. Just like you could bet on the NBA, but also NHL, MLB. Plus you've got the league, league reviews, you got news. It's not just a betting site. There's a lot of content there as well. It has all your sports wagering information. There's live betting, esports. If you're so inclined to bet on esports, there's plenty of betting opportunities there. You can just use it for your scores. BetOnline.net remains your best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Plus all your other favorite sports and events like MMA, boxing, and golf. So plenty there. Head to the website today Use your mobile device, learn about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Please gamble responsibly. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Head on over to the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft for your second listen. The first picks have been made. Search now for Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. Go just put that in your search box wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. It's on the Locked On NBA feed to get over 50 insiders, Odyssey Sports experts, draft experts from Locked On NBA Big Board. The 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway. Make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today. The second batch of questions here, we'll start with Leighton, who says, can the Celtics absorb a contract into a traded player exception, then flip that contract for a player making 120% plus 100,000 more of said contract, making a player in the low $20 million range possible? So yes, they can do this. So here's what Leighton is talking about. The traded player exception is a slot that, for those of you who don't remember from last year, it's basically, I consider it like a coupon for the remaining value of a trade. So they trade out Evan Fournier, they get back a traded player exception, 17.1 blah 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 $1 million, because they didn't take a player back. So they get a coupon, say, okay, you traded Fournier, you're supposed to match salaries. Here's your coupon, $17 million. It's only available for this. Why do they do this? A lot of people say, well, why can't you combine all of these traded player exceptions? The Celtics would have like a $30 million player that they could trade for, because you're basically completing a trade. The Celtics made a 1-for-1 trade, Evan Fournier for player X. And the Celtics are basically saying, we're gonna trade for player X later. But if you combine that with the $9.7 million from the Tristan Thompson trade, then that becomes a 14 trade, right? You're connecting that, and then it doesn't work. So you can't combine the $9.7 million for Tristan Thompson because he was traded to Sacramento. So that's a separate deal. So you can't say, well, now the Celtics are trading Fournier to New York and Thompson to Sacramento, and Sacramento now has to give the Celtics something back. These are all trades. So that's why you can't combine these things. It's not just money. You can't spend the money. It's all a 1-for-1 situation. So you just basically can't combine it. So when you use that 17 million, so let's say you do trade for somebody. I haven't looked at the names, but let's just pretend that there's a $17 million player out there that you can trade for using the traded player exception. Well, that accomplishes, you've satisfied that, you bring that player in. You can immediately trade that player for somebody else. You can't combine that player for anybody else. There's no restriction as far as what you can do with a guy once you've brought in somebody with the TPE. So yeah, you could theoretically bring in a $17 million player that you will immediately flip for a player, because there's wiggle room in the matching salaries. You can go up to 120 million, 120% plus 100,000. You can do that. So yeah, it's possible. I don't know that that's, how the Celtics will use it, but theoretically you can do it that way. The Celtics have a bunch of ways that they can help. I think I got a question, I couldn't find it, of what do the Celtics have that they could use to get somebody? Well, they've got the taxpayer mid-level. That's $6.3 million. They've got traded player exceptions all over the place that probably aren't going to be used, but they do have the ability, most notably the $17.1 million from Evan Fournier that expires on July 18th. Tristan Thompson's 9.7 expires on July 7th. So that's soon. The others all expire in January or February of next year because they were used at the trade deadline. So there are other elements that the Celtics can, a $6.9 million for Wancho, 5.9 for Schroeder, a bunch that are like 1.6, 1.7, $2 million, 1.9 million. So there's these little ones that they're probably not going to be able to use. And again, they can't combine them, but they have them. So the Celtics have a few ways to kind of build this team. So I think the TPE for Thompson could be interesting. I think the Fournier, there are trades there. And the other thing is the Celtics have draft picks, which they're not going to use. The Celtics are just not going to spend a lot of money or a lot of time bringing in anybody's. Like, there's no first round pick this year. The second round pick, it could be a draft and stash. You could, have another guy just out there in, Central Europe kind of developing. Maybe you can have somebody that you bring in later. But there's that. But their number one picks, their first overall picks, I should say, their first round picks are kind of useless. They'll be in the low 20s, 25, 26, 27, in that range. That's not a guy that you're going to bring into this team over the next 2-3 years. So you're basically saying the next 2 or 3 years worth of picks are expendable. So you can attach those for players. And if you maybe a player that you wouldn't have normally gotten given up a first round pick for, you say, hey, we'll spend a little bit more. We'll give a team a first round pick for this guy that fits into this traded player exception because we think that's going to help us. So that's something that is going to be part of the whole plan. So that's a quick kind of down and dirty. These are the elements that the Celtics have to move forward. Pascal, again, by the way, I'll bring Keith Smith back this week because this is his real area of expertise. And I'll bring other people in to talk about the offseason, the moves that they can make, all that potential stuff. So this week is going to be all about what I just talked about in depth, in detail. The Celtics, I think, are in a good position to keep the core intact. So it's a sort of run it back, but also to add to their roster, to add potentially helpful players to their roster that Ime can trust, that the players can trust, that defenses have to respect to get them over that hump. And to that end, Pascal asks, who needs to make the leap next year to help this team? I feel like the team is pretty set, but bench and starters honestly need to take the next step. Who's the one person you think needs to have a big offseason? I'm not going to narrow it down to one because I don't think it's just one person. I think everybody has a leap to make. I think Tatum, as I discussed in the first segment, has a big leap to make. I think Jaylen Brown, with his ball handling and decision-making, has a big leap to make. He can get back to being an all-star player. I think Tatum can get back to being a first-team All-NBA player. They need to make those leaps. Tatum, all of the stuff that I said before. Jaylen, tightening up that handle, just learning more, understanding, maybe working on his mentality in game, finding a way to just not feel like he needs to do everything. Marcus, same idea. Marcus Smart has to improve on things and be better at certain aspects of his game. Grant Williams needs to take a huge step forward. Derek White needs to take a big step forward. All of these guys have, I think, very achievable steps that they can take that are noticeable. I think Robert Williams can take a step, and I think his is more just physical, getting your body right, understanding your body, getting it to a point where you are treating it well and come back in a position where you can absorb and better handle the rigors of the season, but also, add elements to your game, add a post move, add something in the post, like just a drop step, a jump hook, something. I think only Al is the guy. And Al's next step is figuring out how to play next season, maybe in a little bit of a reduced role, because I'm just curious about his ability to Just stay healthy. 36. He had a great year. I think a lot of his year was based on taking half a year off last year, and he felt great. I want to get the same level of production out of Al Horford, but he's going to have to his minutes are going to have to step down. He's probably not going to have to be able to play every back-to-back the way he did. That's going to have to be, they're going to have to treat him, I think, with kid gloves next season to ramp him up in time for the playoffs to get this level of Al Horford in time for the playoffs. Like, they're going to need that. So that's something, but I can't Pascal limit it to just one. I mean, if anything, if you want to say who's the most important, I'm going to start with Tatum. I'm going to start at the top and say, hey, Tatum's got to be that takeover type of guy who can down the stretch be a guy that in the final 4 minutes can go get you 2 buckets, 3 buckets. And that, how much could that have changed the dynamic for the NBA finals? So I think that's something, but everybody that was a contributor on this team has something that they can really lean into. And I think Ime was right. Don't come back the same. Don't come back the same player. Come back with something added to your game. So that's everybody. A question about live ball turnovers and the take foul going away, plus team psychologist. That's all coming up right now after the break. Let's wrap up the mailbag starting with Peaches. Hi, Peaches. With the take foul presumably going away next year, how do you think it will affect the Celtics? As we saw in the finals, they often have many live ball turnovers. Do you think they will be affected more negatively than low turnover teams, or will their athleticism make up for it? Well, I think, getting rid of the take foul, first of all for getting rid of the take foul. I think if the Celtics are turning the ball over at that rate, then that's going to hurt them because they're not going to have an out, because Grant Williams is like the king of the take foul for the Celtics. He'll take it and stop fast breaks, which I get it strategically. It works, but oh man, I hate that thing. So yeah, it's going to force the Celtics a little bit more to kind of rein in the turnovers. I think it's going to be overall good for the league in general. So if they're turning the ball over as badly as they were in the finals, then they're going to see a lot more fast breaks, and that's going to hurt them. So high turnover teams are going to be negatively impacted. The Celtics have to become a low turnover team, and or they're going to have to be forced to work their way all the way back, because this is that will be bad. I'll just say that will be bad. So let's get on to Rita has a couple of questions. Does this team have a full-time sports psychologist that works regularly with the team? Feel Neesmith could benefit from improving his confidence demeanor while playing. Also appeared to me that Tatum was mentally fatigued in the finals and after some demoralizing Warriors play. The women who recently won the French Open tennis tournament brings her full-time sports psychologist to her matches. So that's an interesting thing. Yes, the Celtics do have somebody that's available to the team. I don't think it's anybody that travels with the team full time, but the Celtics have made someone available to the team, mental health resources available to the team whenever they want to use them. I don't know how that works. If it's one person that the team provides and say, hey, here's our sports psychologist. Players may be a little weary of that because, not everybody buys into not everybody buys into the whole mental health, like psychologist thing. I'm not saying that about anybody specifically on the team, but there are people who just like, no, I'm fine. I'll work through it myself. There are people who don't particularly trust anybody in that respect that's offered by the team because I get that. They think this person's going to report back to the team and it's going to be used against me in contract negotiations. There's certainly some of that I've heard about in the NBA. I don't know, again, not specifically with the Celtics. I don't know if that's been a thing with Boston or not, but that's a thing that athletes, I think, deal with. But the Celtics have specifically, they have made resources available. And I wholly encourage guys to use those resources, because sometimes you can get into your own head and it's hard to get out of there. And it's very easy to spiral and have it affect your play on the floor. So having somebody to talk to, whether it's through the team or somebody that you hire on your own, I encourage everybody. And I'm not just saying that because of the finals. I'm saying that just in general. It could be anybody on any team. You could be playing for Oklahoma City. You could be playing for Golden State. You could be playing for the Celtics or whomever. I wholly encourage guys to use those resources, find somebody, and kind of work through some of these mental health issues that may pop up, because this is a tough business, and it's a great life in a lot of ways where you're making a lot of money to play basketball, but also it's a tough life in some ways where the money comes with pressure, and it comes with, people kind of suddenly coming out of the woodworks, and you're not sure sometimes who you can trust and who you can't trust. And the getting paid a lot of money to play basketball stuff is great. And obviously everybody wants to do that and everybody would sign up for that. But anybody making, the type of money that these guys make is a target for scammers and grifters and all of that stuff. And, there's the pressure of a city relying on you for their own mental well-being and their own joy out of a championship. There's pressure there that, sometimes it gets tough to handle that stuff. So I do think that there's, along with the good that we all can accept and understand, like, yes, this is obviously a very, very good life in so many ways. You have to understand negatives to this. There's just like, lottery winners who go broke and lottery winners who regret winning the lottery. There are downsides to having that level of wealth. So it's a good question, Rita. And I think that's something that should be continuously explored in professional sports. Another question from Rita: why do you think bench players like Grant, Derek, Pritchard combined for only 4 or 5 points in the last 2 games? They were hitting shots in previous playoff games. Fatigue shouldn't be a factor because they were playing less minutes than starters. I put that there because I think the mental aspect was part of it for them. There's pressure in those finals for these guys. And I think they didn't respond well, just like the whole team didn't respond well to the pressure of the finals. So I think everybody was impacted. I don't think the Celtics were ready for the finals. It's simply put, you look back at it, and I said this before, I said this last week. You look back at these last 2 games, game 5 and 6, the Warriors raised their game to another level. I thought through games 1 through 4, the Celtics were right there with them. Obviously through the first 3 games, the Celtics had a 2-1 lead. And game 4, I thought, geez, the Celtics did this to themselves. Game 5, the Warriors became the Warriors, and I think they really raised their entire level of game to another level. And the Celtics couldn't reach that. They were not ready for that moment. The Warriors played like a team that had been there and knew what it took, and they focused and got the job done. So it's a tough lesson for these guys to learn in a tough spot, but I think it's a valuable lesson for them. And I think that's what it was. I think just unable to raise your level of play, and the guys on the bench, you press a little bit, you get a little rushed, all it takes, the difference between making and missing a shot, especially a 3-pointer, it's just that little extra flick of the fingertip, or a little extra jump. You're a little too hype, and you jump a little too high and a little too hard, and that ball goes long, or you try to overcompensate and it goes short. There's a lot going on, and it doesn't take much to throw your game off. So I think it was almost entirely mental that the Celtics were taken out of their game by the Warriors. And that's what I think happened. Let's wrap it up with Steven, who says, John, do you know you look like Rick Sherman from Who is America? No, I didn't know that until I looked it up and realized it was a Sacha Baron Cohen movie. And that is further motivation for me to shave my beard, which I'm going to do. The beard is coming off. It'll be back next season. I've already determined that it's going to come back. I'm going to tame it a little bit more next season. I think I've got a plan. I've never grown it out this much. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shave it off this week. I think I'm going to do it on Thursday. And what's going to happen is I'm going to try to use it as a way to raise some money. So I'm going to, if you follow me on Twitter, it's at RedsArmy_John or at LO Celtics. If you want to follow the podcast Twitter and not me, that's fine too. I will put out my call for donations. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to raise money for Heather Walker's fundraiser for brain cancer. She's battling glioblastoma. And she's, for people who don't know, Heather Walker is one of the vice presidents on the Celtics media relations side. And she's been battling this brain tumor, and it's very rare and aggressive. And, you know, she's been fighting like a champ. And I think it would be appropriate to kind of raise money for people who don't have quite the same resources to fight it and the same backing of a professional sports organization. So along with the Jimmy Fund, I think I'm going to try to just use this fun thing to try and add some money. So hopefully I get to raise $1,000 for this. I'll match $250 of the donations. So try to get to 750 of your donations. I'll kick in $250 to get it started, and let's get to 1,000. And then the reward will be the Friday podcast. I will shave into my face whatever you guys choose, and I will put out the options. Do you want the big biker mustache? I'll do it. Do you want big kind of like 1900s, 1800s, just sideburns? Do you want the Burnside big sideburns that go into the mustache without this thing? Do you want the Amish no mustache just thing? However we decide to do it, I'll do it. I will have one day on video, one full show, whatever silly look you want me to have, I'll do it. But we've got to raise $1,000. I will put the link out on the Twitter, and in future shows, I'll put it underneath in the comments. Show me the receipts. You got to show me. You got to tweet at me the receipts. You got to let me know that you've done this. And once we get to $1,000, then Friday's show, me with whatever stupid look you want me to have as I shave this beard off. So let's raise some money for a good cause. Let's have some fun with this. And if you are a new listener, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard to some silliness. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll also do Mailbag Mondays. We'll just kind of make that a thing. We'll do Mailbag Mondays. So it's johnkaralis.com/mailbag to submit your questions. And if you're not subscribed yet, please subscribe to the show, and make sure if you're a YouTube subscriber, you're liking these videos. Make sure you like them. Make sure you're commenting. Send something, say something that feeds the algorithm so the show can get some more traction. Appreciate everybody who got the show to 7,000 subscribers. It was really great. I was hoping to get to 7,500. I thought we could do it if the Celtics won a championship. So next time we'll do that, but we'll continue to add to the numbers over the course of the season. So thank you all. You can also help me out by sharing the podcast if you are a subscriber. Tell everybody, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network.